listening to the voice of freedom, Lee Elci, on 94.9 News Now and stimulating talk.
All right, welcome back, everybody. 20 minutes before the top of the hour. Very special guest joining us right now. He was at one point in time a television sensation. Now he is an internet sensation. He's got his own podcast, and we'll get into that in just a bit. George Colli is joining us. George, good morning. How are you?
Mr. Lee Elci, how we doing? Good to be on with you again.
Listen, I appreciate it, and I'm not even going to begin to try to explain what I'm going to throw in your lap and ask you to explain. Because, I don't want to, talk too much about what I heard yesterday because I did hear it on a rival station, but
Sure.
There was some breaking news that you had covered, and if you don't mind, if you could just sort of reset that for everybody out there, I'd rather have it come from you than me. So what's going on with what's the latest with the governor and the scandal with the building and all of that?
Well, every day there's something new coming out, if not more than one thing coming out. It's been going on. This drip has been going on for months now. And certainly it all seems to be revolving around this former deputy at OPM, the Office of Policy and Management, Costa Diamantis. And we had started hearing the stories last fall about how this guy Diamantis, who's a shrewd, political figure, had been in the legislature, had worked in a bunch of different agencies, a guy that knows government inside and out, and how he allegedly was trying to potentially get his daughter a job with the Chief State's Attorney's Office. And then at the same time, allegedly that the Chief State's Attorney was lobbying OPM to get raises for prosecutors. And so we heard that story. It went to popped out in October. Costa Diamantis got fired. Lamont called for an independent Twardy investigation into the hiring. Lamont, when the Twardy report came out, called for Colangelo, the Chief State's Attorney, to get fired over it. And still to this day, you're hearing about how Costa Diamantis got fired because of his daughter getting hired. Well, yesterday, Diamantis started talking for the first time. He did an hour-long interview on another radio station. And it was, the biggest takeaway from me, first thing, was just hearing Costa talk. After 6 months of kind of constant around-the-clock reporting where he was made out to be kind of this, where he is being made out, and potentially he could be, I don't know yet,
right.
Kind of this villain that was steering school construction contracts to companies that he favored, or even one that his daughter had worked at. He heard this drip coming out. He filed a grievance against Paul Mounds and Josh Cabal, the governor's chief of staff and COO, alleging that they harassed his boss, Melissa McCall, the budget secretary. It really was this, you've heard a lot of nasty things. Well, this guy talked yesterday, and you know what? He kind of cleared up half the stuff that's out there. First and foremost, and who knows what you can believe or not.
Right.
But these federal subpoenas that he's at the center of, involving school construction, involving the New London State Pier, involving, these abatement programs. He says that he found out about those the same time that we did. So he didn't know that his program was the center of a federal investigation until February. Basically the day after Josh Cabal left, and then, the news of these subpoenas came out, which really kind of changes the game in terms of how this has been reported and how he has responded to it. He says that he absolutely positively played no role in trying to get his daughter a job. He says that his daughter has her graduate and master's degree. She's incredibly capable, experienced, 30 years old. That she got that job from the Chief State's Attorney, and he didn't play a role, and he didn't need to play a role because she's more than qualified for that job. Is that true or not? Who knows? But at least for now, we're kind of hearing his side of it. One of the things that really came out to me that makes me question almost the whole narrative that we've gotten out of the Lamont administration, out of the governor, is that the federal investigation, the federal subpoenas, they were released, I think it was October 21st, October 22nd, October 23rd of last year. So those subpoenas were signed by an attorney in the U.S. Attorney's Office who's married to Governor Ned Lamont, Chief General Counsel. So the Lamont administration certainly seemed to get a heads up or a head start on what was going on and when these subpoenas and what they were going to be about. But they never told Costa Diamantis. So there was no chance for this guy to be prepared for it or to respond in kind, really, until he heard about it 5 or 6 months later, allowing the Lamont administration to get like a 5 or 6 month head start on shaping this narrative that he and he alone are the problems within his administration, and that Governor Lamont handled it by getting rid of him. And if there was anything that came out of this interview yesterday, it's that, you know what, that there is another side to this story. And I am not defending Casa de Amantis, but it certainly is refreshing and nice now to be able to give the other side as we investigate it, as we talk about it, as we ask questions about it. And I think that, he raised a lot more questions yesterday, maybe than answers in something, but certainly raised a lot of questions about what the governor knows, when he knew it, and what he's been doing about it over the last few months as these scandals have continued to kind of snowball in his direction.
All right, it's interesting that you bring this up, that he was, willing to talk for over an hour. I heard the same exact thing from news reporters. If you pick up the phone and you call him, he talks. He doesn't, he doesn't hide anything.
He's not hiding.
So, that makes me, either he's incredibly cagey and, incredibly sort of able to think quickly on his feet, or he's telling the truth. Right, because it's easy to tell the truth if you're telling. It's easy to play that game if what you're saying is true, right?
And especially, yes. I think you're absolutely right. When all of a sudden you have a guy at the center of all these federal investigations, important to note that there are no charges or indictments yet against them. It's just investigations at this point. But to have him go in the middle of all this and talk for an hour, and they couldn't even cover everything in the hour. There's still much. There's still more he has to answer. But just to hear how open he was, what came out of this is that he's very proud of his work with this school construction program. He says that the idea that they had, this model that they have, was praised nationwide. That they were able to figure out how to save hundreds of millions of dollars in school construction. Something that had been, you'd heard stories over the years here in Connecticut of $20 million over budget, $30 million over budget, $40 million over budget for some of these construction jobs. He says that they were able to kind of figure this out with the reimbursement programs, and I won't get into the inside baseball program, but what was important is that he didn't want to hide from this, that he was very proud of the work that he did. Now, he also said at one point that, the reason why that construction program, which had originally been through the Department of Administrative Services, DAS, it got moved to OPM when he took the deputy job with Melissa McCall. And there's a lot of questions at the time with the legislature as to that move. The governor's administration has said at the time it was about efficiency, it was about lowering costs, it was about getting a containment of the growing cost of construction. But there was a lot of issues about it becoming a political office, a political program.
Yeah.
And what Costa said yesterday, he says this is not meant to be a political program, and it wasn't a political program really until the governor and his administration made it one.
What?
And basically saying that they have kind of made him this enemy and it's all about politics. Like I said, I don't know what's right or not right with this guy, but you're right. The fact that he was willing to talk for so long, and I hear he could be talking to others. I won't blow up their spot, but he's going on a tour now.
Yeah.
His attorney is Norm Pattis. Norm Pattis is an outside-the-box guy. Norm Pattis would make sure that his attorney doesn't say a word if Norm Pattis didn't trust his attorney to talk, or his client to talk. And so he definitely knows his stuff. I think he knows more about government and the inner workings of government than anybody in the upper echelon of the Lamont administration does. And no matter what happens here, and the fix might be in for Casa de Amantis by the time it's all said and done, but let me tell you, it's going to make it a much more interesting next few months for all of us following it if this guy is willing to start pushing back on the narrative that the Lamont administration has set over the last few months.
What did he do before this job?
Everything. And so he was a lawyer for 30 years. He's got 5 daughters. I think one's in high school. The rest have all gone through college and grad school and everything else. He's from the Bristol area. He was a state representative, I think, for 6 years, maybe.
Oh, okay.
I get that wrong. Maybe 14 years, but he was a state representative for years.
Okay.
After that, he lost the race, and then he started working for Jim Amon when Amon was the speaker in his office, I think, as a lawyer or as some sort of staffer. And then he started working through some different agencies. He was at DAS. He's been, he finished off at OPM. He got this school construction program, I think 6-7 years ago, put in his hands. And it sounds like he really made this his baby. Now, one thing that I always kind of jumps out is, he said that it got moved over because he was the only one who really understood this program. Whenever I hear somebody in government say that, it always kind of makes me kind of sigh, roll my eyes.
Yeah.
Everybody's replaceable.
Sure.
But the institutional knowledge this guy has for the program seems to be real. And it kind of made a lot more sense as to why maybe they moved the program along with him. that was something that I thought was always kind of very shady. He kind of gave the answer to it, and it wasn't something that the Lamont administration had a problem with at the time. It was something the legislature had a problem with, and Democrats and Republicans in the legislature had a problem. And so he was, I just thought he was very open. There were some things he didn't talk about. He wouldn't get into the grievance complaint against Mounds and Gabal of harassment and abuse because that's still in front of the National Labor or in front of the Labor Relations Board.
Right.
He didn't get into, and he wasn't asked the question, but he didn't get into a lot of specifics in terms of the allegations against him being made in Tolland, where he allegedly tried to force the school that had the crumbling foundation and kind of pushing his construction company that he favored on it. So there's still some questions he has to answer. But I'll tell you, I mean, I got a much better idea of who the man is, and he didn't back down from anything. So it was an enlightening, illuminating conversation. And like I said, there's still questions he has to ask. Who knows what he says is true or not? But I certainly am keeping a more open mind here as I read this investigation and read what comes out each day.
Every time I see a photo of him, I just think he looks like a mob guy.
Let me say, he's a guy from Bristol. Like, this guy is so much more street smart than like Ned Lamont or Josh DeBall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I don't feel he may be guilty, but let me tell you, he ain't going down without a fight. And this guy is shrewd, and he knows how government works, and he knows where the bodies are buried in government and specifically in the Lamont administration. But he was sharp. I got to tell you, it was. Sometimes these guys get too cocky when they want to overcompensate that they're innocent.
Yep.
That wasn't really what I found,
okay,
or what I thought it was yesterday. He was confident. But I think those guys that run those kinds of billion-dollar programs generally are pretty confident. But he wasn't cocky.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of an important thing just on my radar as far as what to make of the guy. There's a lot more questions, but it was, and it's a complicated story.
Yeah,
I tried to explain this in a radio conversation. It's hard, so that's why I'm not trying to get it.
No, you're doing a good job of it. You're doing a real good job of it.
But it just is, the question really is what did the governor know? When did he know it? And why does it appear he's not being upfront? The governor said at the end of the press briefing last week that he was asked, was Costa fired because of these federal subpoenas that had come in a week before he was let go? And Lamont goes, oh, no, I wasn't really told about subpoenas. My attorney just told me in passing. Is that first? That would be a conversation your attorney would sit you down over coffee.
Of course it would.
Let me tell you what came in.
Yeah.
Throw on top of that it's his attorney's husband who signed the subpoenas, and it makes the governor's answer seem even more out of whack. And so I think the governor's going to have a lot more explaining to do. He doesn't do it very well when he needs to explain it. But, it's just another example where he has, I don't believe, been very transparent or very upfront with us, with the people he represents here.
Yeah. It sounds like he's one of these guys I'm talking about. Diamandis is one of the kind of guys who's not going down quiet. He's not going to sit back and let them punch the hell out of him. He's going to swing. And it'll be interesting to see what we find out with all of this. We got George Colli. Listen, we're going to run out. We're actually out of time. But I want to give you the opportunity. Tell everybody where they can find out more about you and where they can watch your podcast every day.
So, after years of working at NBC, Fox, Connecticut, Channel 8, I started up this gcolli.com, GCOLLI. At this point, we're still in the training wheel session. It's basically 20 minutes to an hour a day going over the news, breaking down things, taking a collection of good reporting, putting it all together, trying to give a more complete story. We'll be adding interviews, we'll be adding call-ins. And the idea is I want this to be a multimedia news network. We're just an online show for an hour a day today, but the hope is to bring other people in, for people to build their brand. I don't need the 25-year-old reporter coming from Syracuse or Missouri. I want the expert in their field that's going to come in and talk about the cannabis industry or the sports gaming industry or the real estate industry or health and wellness. Like, I want to talk to the people that are on the ground, like you do every day on the radio.
Right.
And so it's going to be kind of a hybrid of podcasting, radio call-in shows, and, say, TV Sunday morning interview shows. And it's going to be local. It's going to be focused on Connecticut. And, I may cover a story that happened last week, but most likely it's a story that hasn't been covered by anywhere else, maybe than some of the callers on a radio show or some of the hosts. And so the idea is we're trying to focus on the stories that nobody else is focusing on. And I'd love people to tune in. Every day the show is free when it airs. The next day it goes into an archive, and members can look back. I hope your audience subscribes today and follows along.
All right, you're doing a great job covering all this stuff. You really are. You're ahead of everybody on all of it. So I thank you for updating us. I mean, keeping us in the loop because you're making it easy to follow, and I appreciate that.
And I'm going to say this real quick because I know you got to go.
Yep.
That conversation you had before me with the two women talking about the mandates and this White House college challenge, that's the next thing I'm getting on.
There you go.
It's callers like that give me the content. And so let me know. So if I hear stuff on your show, I'll look into it. So let me know. And if your viewers have anything for me to check out, they can write to me at George Colli anytime on social media.
All right, George. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks,
All right, you got it. George Colli, always a pleasure to talk to him. We're out of time. We got to go. I want to thank all the great guests today. Again, be safe. It's going to snow, so go slow. All right? Pay attention. Don't get in an accident. I don't want to see you get hurt. We'll do it all over again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day. Until then, we'll see you.